But Sunil, there are certainly things that the 49ers can do to change their fortune this year and finally get over the hump. So I'm going to ask you, what can the 49ers do? What changes or tweaks can they make, or would you suggest for the 49ers to hoist that Lombardi trophy? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, I'm really high on the cornerbacks this year. Like, Ambry Thomas, I know he was somebody I was really high on when they drafted him. He has made me a fool as far as saying that he was going to be, a big impact player for the 49ers. But having that third corner, I think we've seen that the 49ers have been able to be taken advantage of from a defensive side of the ball, not having a guy outside of Demo and Mooney Ward, right? Whether it was Ambry Thomas or, you could insert whatever other corners have been there. Guys like Samuel Womack, who now has been in the system for 3 years, who's shown some flashes, or Renardo, like, he's somebody who, both of us are really high on, that potentially could upgrade that third. I think that's going to help stabilize some of the, that's a key, I guess, an opening that the opposing offenses could take advantage of in the past. So eliminating that, I think, can help stabilize the defense a little bit. But for me, the biggest way I think the change that could be made is give the reins to Purdy. Like, let him be, like, give him the ability to be more of a playmaker. We've seen, when he's scrambling and what he's able to do. I think, there's still, I think a lot of people question his ability to maybe make that play consistently with, like, maybe some of his physical deficiencies or whatnot. But ultimately, I think he's a really smart guy. I think he understands the system. I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for. And I think that he ultimately is a gamer, man. He's done nothing but come to the 49ers and win, right? So to me, for multiple reasons, but I think ultimately it will help get the 49ers offense to the next level, is Kyle Shanahan put some more trust in Purdy, give him the ability to maybe audible at the line of scrimmage, or, be able to kind of give him opportunities to make a play outside of the confines of that, of the system. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that I would like to see, and where I think really can separate, because ultimately that makes the 49ers even harder to defend now when you have another weapon in your quarterback.
Yeah, I actually fully agree. I mean, the thumbnail is the thumbnail for a reason. And the title is the title. So that's exactly where I was going to go with it. But one thing I want to say, though, and since you really said it beautifully with Purdy, and I agree with you, not a lot to add, let's just talk in general with this team. I mean, a lot of times players are the same, but they're the same name and the same person, but they're different players year to year. Bosa is a great example of this. I mean, 2019 Bosa versus 2021 Bosa, two different players. Fred Warner, 2019 Fred Warner versus Fred Warner today, two completely different players, right? Fred Warner at that time was just ascending. Now he's like the elite of the elite. Bosa last year, presumably you can say, hey, he'll probably get better because he had a bit of a down year, especially for him. But he was coming off of a year in which he was fighting for a contract. Exactly. Yeah. So you can probably expect that he's going to get better. Hargrave, admittedly, came in out of shape last year. You would expect that he's better. Now, Debo said he was going to be in better shape. I don't know that he was. He certainly looks like he's physically in better shape this year, fighting probably for a new contract. So you can expect that maybe he gets better. So there's, the players, we can talk about Purdy. I think Purdy's going to take a step forward. He has a full off season. You talked about that. The offensive line, even though the players are the same, the continuity is not necessarily the same. They've got a whole extra year of continuity. So you can have the same names across the board and still take a step forward. Flip side of that is you can have the same names and you can take a step back as well. Right. A player gets a year older, they lose a step, what have you. But when I look at the 49ers in totality, yeah, there might be a player that takes a step back, but I would say most players I would expect to possibly take a step forward when I go player for player across this roster. So that's what I'm looking for from this team is just the players that were here last year be a little bit better than you were last year. That's how you go win.
And one player that, sometimes it falls underneath the radar because the 49ers usually outscore teams by quite a lot. But Jake Moody, we he didn't have the year that I think people expected, especially drafting him where they drafted him. But he has another year, and he has playoff experience, and he has some playoff failure, right? He missed that extra point in the Super Bowl, and I think did he miss a field goal? I don't remember if he missed a field goal in the Super Bowl as well, but
Missed an extra point.
it definitely missed the extra point. I know that, but he was somebody who Harbaugh said was an extremely clutch player. We know he has strength in that leg, right? And that could potentially be a weapon. Maybe having that year, obviously is a highly pressurized year for a rookie to come in and, especially because this team is Super Bowl or bust. I think that, potentially if he gets significantly better or, takes that next step, Jesse, that's a guy that could really make some changes for this team when you have a guy who potentially makes some 50 plus yarders. And if he could just be consistent and not miss, as many field goals, take that percentage up closer to, 88, 90%, all of a sudden now, that makes this offense even better as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and he definitely can get better for sure. I mean, you're talking about it. Interestingly enough, in college, and I talked about this when he was drafted, for as big as his leg is, he usually tends to make the longer kicks. It's usually between like 40 and 49 is where he struggles a little bit. It's like, all right, I got to maybe take a little bit off and I got to concentrate on being accurate. And that's kind of what you saw from him throughout the season and in the playoffs as well. It's like if you give him a 50 yarder, 55 yarder, he really is Money Moody from those distances. You know what I mean? So it's a mental thing. And with kickers, I really think it's all mental. So for him, if he can improve on that, work through that, maybe see a sports psychologist, whatever he's got to do, certainly he's a player that we're not mentioning as well. And then the special teams unit as a whole can improve. I mean, they've definitely tried. They've spent some money in that area in the past and with some mixed results, but we saw how special teams really hurt them in the Super Bowl. Well, maybe you, with the kickoff rule, you really take the bull by the horns and you're the best team in the league at it. You do something different and everybody else is playing catch up to you. So there's definitely some changes that need to be made. And then one more change, and I think it would be an overlook on our part or an oversight on our part if we didn't talk about it. Kyle Shanahan. I really did praise him at a lot of points last year for changing the way that he viewed his quarterback or seemingly viewed his quarterback and really patted Brock on the back and gave him encouragement and even at times was taking blame. But it does seem like as they got later in the season and got into the playoffs, he was less and less willing to take some of that blame and maybe look in the mirror. Now, I don't care what he says outwardly to us. It can be a little annoying, but more so, what is he doing to reflect internally? And he can improve as well. So I think that that's another thing that we have to look at and say, hey, Kyle, he has some things he has to improve on. Can he do that? And that's another way this team can improve as well.